Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic and wonderful. Everything here is great. This weekend, I did not get to spend a ton of time down here. I had quite a bit going on, but I did start on the router table project. I don't know if I said last week that this was going to be the next project, but this is the next project, is building a simple router table. And while working on this, I thought, I had a thought. I went and looked, I've been watching YouTube now for, I don't know, a decade or something, specifically like woodworking, making YouTube. So I've seen dozens of router table builds at this point, and I had some concept of what I wanted in a router table. But I went and did some refreshing on Saturday and kind of looked into other people's designs, looked at my space needs, where this is going to live. This router table is going to double as an outfeed table for my table saw. So currently I have this crappy little thing that I don't even know what it was or how I found it, but I kind of knocked a couple pieces of wood together to make an outfeed table slash storage thing. This is going to take the place of that. So it needs to be a specific height. In this case, about 1/4 of an inch lower than my table saw. And then I can always shim it. It's going to need shimmed because there's a drain right there and the floor is weird anyway. So it's going to, when it's rolled into place, I will super glue down some like pads for it to sit on and then lock it down. So that it'll be shimmed, with the table saw. But anyway, while I was thinking about this, right, this started as I went and did some research, and then I looked, there's hundreds of YouTube makers, and they all have their own version of the router cabinet, and they all sell plans. And they all ask like around $10 for plans for their projects. And while I was thinking about that, if you've been a maker for any amount of time, or especially a woodworker, there are companies that will try to sell you, like, here's 1,000 plans for things. I have never once built anything off of somebody else's plans. That woodworking. And I'm curious about that. I'm curious to know who uses plans. Like, do you... First of all, I've never found anything I wanted to make and thought that the version that somebody else made was exactly what I wanted, and I'm going to make that to the T. That's never happened to me. Second of all, I've never, besides something like Legos, where you are given a finite amount of resources to make a thing, and that thing, you kind of have to build it the way they want. I've never understood what are the plans for? Specifically, like this project. Say this is a cabinet that's going to hold a router. So there's some considerations. And if you look at my first sketch that I did, the considerations are I needed the table to be a certain size. I'm going for a 3-foot by 2-foot table. So it's a little bit less deep than a lot of other people's router tables, but that's what I want. I needed to make consideration for getting the router in and out of the router plate lift area so that the center box needs to be a certain size. And other than that, whatever else is up to me, right? Or up to whoever would design it. And in looking at all the other plans, I would have to have modified their plans to fit my needs anyway. And if I'm going to do that work, why would I use their plans? Why wouldn't I just make my own? And I look at things that way all the time. My mom is a big cross stitcher, and she would always use these cross stitching plans. And it's like, if you know how to cross stitch, can't you just look at the picture and then just do what that, like, I'm gonna do 7 of these and that's it? Like, why do you need a plan that says do this stitch, this stitch? Like, I don't get it, right? Or knitting and sewing is the same kind of thing. If you're making a shirt, why do you need like a pattern? I mean, I guess that in that case it's for ease, but specifically like something knitting or crocheting where you have to do a certain amount of stitches, why don't you just do it until it's the size that you need it to be? I've never followed along. I mean, I get with those particular skills, there's patterns that you would knit or crochet into your thing. But this type of thing, it's, I guess there are people who are incapable of making plans, and I've never understood that. I guess that's where I'm coming from. I've been making things since I was a toddler, and I've never worked off of somebody else's plans. I've always been able to just envision the thing and then draw it up. So I went from this basic, like, first level was I needed to be 37 inches tall. The tabletop's going to be 36 inches by 24 inches. I want a 2-inch overhang on the front and a 3-inch overhang on each side. It's going to be made out of 3/4 inch material, 4-inch casters. Top is going to be laminated. Go, right? So the box, pretty simple. I've got an 1.5-inch top, 4-inch casters, so I need a 31.5-inch tall box, and that will all add up to 37 inches. It needs to be, I'm going to have 36-inch wide top with a 3-inch overhang on each side, so I need the thing to be 30 inches wide. So I go from there and I draw up my actual plan. This is the actual plan that I know. Now I know my major dimensions. I've got 31.5 inches tall, 20 inches deep because I want a 2-inch overhang on the front and back, and 28.5 inches wide because, well, that's not true. It's going to be 30 inches wide, but knowing this is 3/4 inch material, taking off 1.5 inches for the two side pieces, I know my center pieces are 28.5. You know, and it's very, very easy to, in my head, it's very, very easy to draw this up and go, all right, I need 3 pieces at 28.5 by 3 by 20. I need 2 side pieces at 31.5, whatever, and I just walk through it. And in my opinion, in my head, in the way that I do work, this is easier than trying to follow somebody else's plans. Because following somebody else's plans means I'm going to go through their thing step by step, however they laid it out, however they wrote their plans, and I have to try to figure out how to mimic all of that in my workflow. And my workflow doesn't normally match how they do things. For instance, when I made this, I was able to draw up my plan and figure out how many of each panel that I needed, how many sizes of this, how many things of that. And then I used a website called Cut List Optimizer. And Cut List Optimizer takes all of those panels and lays it out on a standard sheet of plywood for me, and I can look at it and go, all right, I've got to make 2 rip cuts or 3 rip cuts lengthwise, and then I can cut out each panel and trim them to size. And so what I did was I used my new Craig rip cut jig, and I ripped the plywood with that to length. I cross-cut rough lengths with my circular saw, just free-handed rough cut, cross-cut. I cut everything about a 1/2 inch oversize. And then I would use the table saw to bring it all to dimension. So all the pieces that were 20 inches wide got ripped to 20 inches wide at the same time. So they're all exactly the same width. All the 2 pieces or the 3 pieces that are that make up the 3 shelves are 28.5 inches wide, so they all got ripped at the same time. You know, I just walked through that process, and then now all I have left is to assemble all this stuff, which is pocket holes and some glue and some screws and done. And I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that a rarer skill, like being able to envision the end product and see the steps that it takes to get there, and being able to map that out? Is that like a skill? Is that something that you develop? Is that something that I developed in my childhood, and I'm just not I'm not aware of the struggles that I went through then, because at this point in my life I can just mentally unpack things and make them in my head? Maybe that is a skill. I guess it is. I guess that's why woodworking plans are a thing, because if you want to be able to replicate something that somebody else has done, you might not have the ability to just do that, and you have to really understand their process. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Maybe this is boasting, and that's ew, and maybe it isn't. I don't know. All I know is the next project is underway. By the end of this weekend, I will have a new router table. Hopefully, I'll get down here at some nights this week and put a couple hours into this. This is just the carcass. I still have to make all the drawers and doors, and I don't think I have enough 1/2 inch plywood for that. I was planning on using 1/2 inch for the doors and drawers, or at least for the drawers. I don't know that I have enough 1/2 inch for that, so I might have to pick up some extra pieces. But I have a couple more sheets of 3/4 inch that I can play with, so lots of other projects to come. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is lassitude. It is a noun meaning having little energy or motivation or wariness. We know what boredom is. It's a dull, impatience, or a fierce volatility, a champing wish stalled by our lassitude to make or do. Richard Wilbur, an American poet. Lassitude, Lassitude. That champing wish, what does that mean? I'm more interested in what that means and what velity is. I don't remember champing being in this book. So it would have been nice if you'd have taught me that word first before sending me down to read that weirdness.